All right, so welcome again. And the flow of the conversation is going to be as follows. I will start with a little bit of an update on what we are doing at Leadership at Humanity, maybe 5-7 minutes. I'll be informing or sharing with you about our next offering, which is our LEH Leadership Journey, which we are so excited to bring to life. We've been working on it for a while. Now we are ready to bring it to the world and introduce something which we are so proud of. Then I'm going to hand it over to Rubina, inviting Rubina to introduce Dr. Sven and lead a conversation with Dr. Sven, which will help us to unfold resilience from his eyes. Then towards the end of the session, we will have around 15 or 20 minutes, which are dedicated to Q&A. So make sure that during the conversation, as Sven walks us through with his perspective on resilience, any questions you may have on this dialogue, by the way, even beyond, make sure you put those up in the dialogue box. And I will, towards the end, we'll have around 15 or 20 minutes to make sure that those questions are addressed. I already talked about keeping your mics mute so that it's not disturbing the dialogue, but in the Q&A, feel free to unmute and raise the question. So with that, let me very quickly move to providing you a quick update on what we are doing at Leadership at Humanity. So our mission of creating human leaders with enhanced value and sustained impact has been on track, if I may say. I'm working with a very passionate team of humans, which is basically furthering this dialogue and expanding the conversation. We started with the LEH open mentoring program. A lot of those mentors and mentees are on the call today. Our intent was to really provide an open access to those mentees who typically don't get proper guidance, whether through their organization's programs or they are in places or in needs when they are not able to access the quality of mentors which they need to further their careers. This is doing well. We have close to 80 mentees today being mentored by over 50 mentors. A big thanks, by the way, to everyone, all of those who you are on the call, and also those who are not able to join today. This has been going so well, and I'm in touch with some of the mentors and mentees, and I feel great the way people are not only sharing and reaching out to each other, but actually growing from this program. Our next focus was to really expand the conversation and start building leaders at early stages of their careers. So we are right now in conversations with some universities in Vietnam. My request, please put your mics on mute, where we intend to actually introduce a curriculum on leadership at humanity in the second year course of MBA. And we had a session last Saturday with over 500 students in Vietnam to talk about how they can grow international careers. We partnered with Consulate General of India in Vietnam to set up this webinar, which was very well received, over 500 students from the universities in Vietnam who attended that. So excited about that going forward. And then we continue to have conversations as something like what we are doing right now, which is the dialogue with those leaders who have challenged the boundaries, who have expertise in very specific areas which align or link with our agenda of humanity and leadership. After the conversation today with Sven, our next dialogue, a sneak peek for all of you, is on the 9th of December. And we are inviting a very unique and different guest this time, Cecilia Vaca-Jones, who was the Minister of Social Justice in Ecuador, is right now leading a global foundation based out of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So more to come on that as we go on. And then more importantly, we are very excited to announce the launch of our leadership journeys. So we've been working on this, where we wanted to create a kind of program which will enable leaders to reignite humanity and actually take the gap between being and doing away. So we are now ready to introduce those programs. These are meant for senior leaders who want to enhance their impact. Our focus will be to go to the fundamentals of our leadership humanity, which is building core and capacity in the leaders. We have global experts who will be leading these programs. The whole idea is to create or provide experiences or deep experiences to people who will then start on a journey of self-exploration and then eventually change. And then we'll be assigning a dedicated coach throughout this 4.5 months journey to every participant so that they have a sounding board and this change is not only felt, but it is embedded and experienced by people around them. So our next programs, or actually first programs, are ready to be kicked off. First one, which is dedicated to the Americas and Europe, Middle East, and Africa, will kick off on December 6th. And then we have a dedicated journey for India leaders, which will be kicking off on January 17th with peak experience event in Ladakh region in India in the week of February 14th. So you want to know more about these programs, how you can join, who can be part of these journeys, please go on our website and you will find more details, or you can get access to more details. So with that, I'm going to invite Rubina to take the dialogue forward. Over to you, Rubina.
Thank you, Atul. Thank you very much for inviting me to host these conversations for the LEH. That's an absolute privilege to, collaborate with you for over the last few months and see how your LEH journey is growing. So a big hello to everybody and welcome to this resilience session. I really feel very proud to have an opportunity to introduce Dr. Sven Hansen, the founder of the Resilience Institute. I've been associated with the Resilience Institute, and it's been very exciting to see how enriching that has been. So Dr. Sven, he started his early career with the Special Forces, and then he went on to do medicine and became a sports doctor. After that, he did his MBA. And then he beautifully brought together the science and practice of elite sport to the corporate world. It's fascinating to see how he brought the basic biological principles, something that all of us have access to build resilient leaders and resilient organizations. And he then has been traveling across the world, training resilience in leadership in organizations, through corporates, banks, universities, entrepreneurs, and a variety of people and organizations. But to my mind, the biggest contribution that Dr. Sven has made to this body of work of resilience is his the evidence-based diagnostic that he has conceptualized and designed, and it has been extensively used by corporates all over the world. It truly is a differentiator. If you guys are, any one of you is interested to know more about it, please read his book Inside Out. It beautifully explains the whole diagnostics and the process. Other than all this, Dr. Sven is also big on adventure sport. And he spends most of his time between Auckland and Noosa with his wife, Susan. So welcome, Dr. Sven. It was great again to hear from you, Atul, about LEH. And most of us who have been here are familiar that LEH really, the model it follows, it focuses on leaders building their core and capacity to make an impact way beyond the organization and their teams. And therefore, resilience becomes a very, very critical capability there. So I see a lot of synergy, Sven, between your work and the LEH model. And as we start these conversations, the first thing that comes to my mind is that as leaders work to nurture and develop their capacities, how can they become more resilient? Can resilience be learned? And if it can be, can you please share 4 to 5 tips with us, something that our audience can take away and start practicing to build their resilience muscle and be resilient in adversity?
Fantastic. Well, I think you've said it, in that it's a muscle, it can be built. So no question. So look, firstly, thank you, Rubina. Thank you, Atul. I mean, I kind of feel like I've been on this journey of leadership at Humanite since the day I was born. My dad was a professor of pediatrics, that's children, and my mother was a psychiatric social worker. So I was an experimental child, and they started this stuff with me from the day I was born. So we had early morning wake-ups, barefoot runs, cold swims, broccoli for breakfast, and psychotherapy before school. So I'm going to try and give you 18 years of their training in just a few minutes. But I think, it's a complicated topic. People who are really serious about this can invest 50,000 hours in learning how to be resilient. Now, as soon as we use that word, we get into trouble. So I guess, right at the beginning, and I'm going to focus, as Rubina's asked, on some practical things. But I'd first like to frame this up, because I think it's really dangerous when people misunderstand the explanation. So let me ask you a question. Hands up if you think resilience is bounce back. Give me a show of hands if you think resilience is bounce back. Yeah. So think about times in your life where you've had difficulty, where you've had a really challenging experience.
I thought, okay, I had something in mind. Thank you.
You just watch those mutes. So just think about those difficult experiences and ask yourself the question, did you grow through that difficult experience? Did you learn something about yourself? Did you develop new skills? And I think that's, as leaders, and I guess I'm talking to you tonight as leaders, the first thing is bounce back is not possible. Humans bounce forward. Adversity is the crucible for our growth. And now, of course, there can be too much adversity. And the world has been through a very difficult time with COVID. And in many ways, the world is a bit depleted. So right at the moment, our team are talking to dozens of leaders around the world. The most common theme, almost the only theme in our conversations with them, is how tired they feel. Exhausted, fatigue, over it. And you've heard about, what do they call it, the mass resignation. I talked to a bank today. They're actually worried about their critical functions because people are leaving. And this is happening in every country. So it's a real challenge. I think leaders, whether we call it leadership at Humanity, whether we call it the resilience, doesn't matter. We want to talk about something common. Our definition of resilience has 4 components, 4 learned components. Every single one can be learned. It doesn't matter who you are, where your skills are. We can learn that. All right, so as I said, if we start with adversity, evolution is a consequence of adversity. Species develop through adversity. We become better. So when we confront adversity, we bounce, we grow. And that leads to new connections and the opportunity for a new form of flow. And Atul used the word peak experience. Flow, just so you're aware about it, that is you at your best. As McKinsey says, when you're in flow, you're 5 times more productive. That's the goal. All right, so 4 learned capabilities. Can we bounce forward fast? Can we grow our physical, emotional, and mental resources?
Webinar, you can leave for me.
Dennis, can you
Webinar?
pop your mic off?
Bounce,
Dennis,
grow,
you need to
connect.
pop your mic off.
Giờ tham gia sẽ join.
No lah.
Alrighty, so and the connect is to connect with ourselves, with others, with nature, with the planet we live in, and that's how we can achieve flow. So I'm going to get to, Rubina, your questions. I'd like to just here we go, is the sense of altitude. All right, so every single one of us would like to wake up and feel great. You want to wake up and say, let's rock. I feel strong, I feel clear, I feel passionate. Many days we wake up and we feel like death warmed up. So the fundamental concept of resilience is this idea of altitude, that as humans, we can rise and we can fall. And we can learn to rise faster and we can learn to understand that. And it brings together many what we call human factors. Okay, and the job of leadership, number one, is to know where you are. If you know where you are, you can move yourself up. That's job 2, mastery. Job 3 is empathy. How are your people? And job 4 is altruism. Can you lift people up, which is the mission of leadership at Humanity. So as a guide for leaders, if you look at this across a population, when I talk about the bank losing people, that's right at the bottom. Okay, that is the situation where people just don't want to work with you anymore. All right, in some organizations, there's lots of anger. You see in the anti-vaccination campaigns, it's very angry. All right, there are a lot of people still very anxious. Will my business survive? How will we reconnect? And it's a very confusing world out there. So we're striving as leaders to build safety, a sense of a safe and secure environment for people to work and live. We want to build well-being. That's physical, that's emotional, that's mental. We want trust, connection, the emotional world. And we want clear minds, agile thinking. And that's our base for performance. And at the end of the day, it comes down to an individual journey. Each one of us needs to know how to hunt for that sense of being secure. Safety cannot be given to you. We as leaders need to find that sense of being secure, to be calm, steady, engaged, and present. We've got to work that physical well-being. We've got to work our emotions. We've got to work our mind. All right, so that's all I'm going to share in terms of a concept. Rubina, here are my answers. All right, and I know this is going to be really, really dull for some of you, but I'm so serious about this. If you're not doing these things, you can't lead. We're seeing this in organizations all over the place. You have got to take care of yourself if you want to care for others. All right, it's critical. This list can never be right for any one person, but this is the list I think we as leaders want to work through. All right, I'm going to take each one quickly and then we'll take some questions. So first, move briskly every day. 2, sleep discipline, get it sorted. 3, breathe out and do it slowly. 4, all right, understand this whole game of presence and focus. And 5, EQ and empathy. So let's go through them really quickly. And I think some of them we can really go through. You all know about exercise. We've known about this for over 100 years, and yet 75% of the world refuses to exercise adequately. You've got to do something every day, 30 minutes every day. You've got a zillion choices. You can walk, you can sweep the house, you can do some yoga. There are all kinds of options. When you exercise, think part of it is the movement. Humans need to move between 9 and 15 kilometers per day. When we do that, every index of human well-being goes up. Almost every single disease reduces. It is the one absolutely crystal clear thing we can all do to change the world to be a better place. Move. And if you can add some stretching, you know, some posture work, some strength, some speed work here and there, that's a great thing. But you know what? If you're a leader, move definitively for 30 minutes a day. All right? Without it, it's dangerous, very dangerous today. 2, get the sleep thing sorted. It's quite a complicated topic, but you can make it very, very simple. This is something that is wiping out our young people. If we could solve sleep, we'd solve much of the problem of mental illness amongst our young people. So what do we need to do ourselves? What do we need to help our kids with? What do we need to help our people with? Well, first, you've got to understand sleep need. There's a biological genetic need for sleep. In humans, it ranges between 6.5 and 8 hours. No less, no more. If you sleep too much, it's as dangerous as sleeping too little. So your first job is to work out what is your sleep need. Mine is about 7 hours and 22 minutes. Your job is to go and work out what is your sleep need and get it sorted every day. For a long time, sleep need has been the main thing. The average adult, so the average person sitting around this call, is sleeping 1 hour less than they need. The average teenager is sleeping almost 2 hours less than they need. All right, this is a very unsafe thing for humanity. Second thing, the C stands for circadian rhythm. This is also biology. It is in your genes. Every species has its own clock. As humans, we are fantastic during the day, but we're a bit quiet at night. So as I come towards 9-10 p.m. Australian time, I need to be careful because my body is starting to shut down. My physiology is shutting down, my hormones are shutting down, my emotions are shutting down, my body's shutting down. All right, it's preparing me for sleep. Every single one of us have a perfect time to fall asleep. In my case, it's about 9:10. Okay? You need to hunt, what is your best time to go to sleep? When you put your head in a pillow at that time, provided you've had no screens for approximately 1 hour, you will go into deep sleep. All right, and then you've got to work out what's the best time for you to wake up. Ideally, it's about 20 minutes before the sun rises. The blue light before the sun rises resets your biological clock to be the magnificent humans we can be. If you can lock in your sleep time and wake up time, you create biological rhythm. That biological rhythm will nourish absolutely everything in your leadership, in your humanity. And then the last one in sleep is the U, which stands for ultradian rhythm. And that just simply says, and you know, today with Fitbits, you can all track this sort of thing. When you fall asleep at your ideal time, you go into 2 cycles of deep sleep. Cleans the brain, cleans the body, sorts out your hormones. It is the anti-aging medicine of our time. Ideally, you get that deep sleep between about 9 o'clock and 1 a.m. After that, you go into dreaming sleep. We need both deep sleep and dreaming sleep in exactly the right amount. Dreaming sleep gives you your creativity, your memory, your emotional intelligence, and it allows you to recover from trauma the previous day. If you take war vets and you train their brains to do deep sleep, they recover from their post-traumatic stress. All right, so sleep, know how much you need, get it. Know your go to sleep time, know your wake up time, and maybe track for a bit until you can get that rhythm. If your sleep rhythm is robust, everything else, your charisma, your presence, your empathy, your ability to recognize facial expressions, they're all improved. Miss 20 minutes of sleep, and your people notice a drop in your leadership. Your character, your presence, your decisiveness, and your morality. Don't mess with sleep. All right, it is a very, very dangerous mistake. Challenge 3, tactical calm. So we're in the world of meditation and mindfulness. And look, it's a very difficult thing to do. And I'm sure many of you have practiced with mindfulness. And we know that it has some good benefits, but it's tough. All right, tactical calm is a slightly different idea. Tactical calm is, as a leader, to know I'm coming into a difficult moment, got a call, people all over the world, different countries, different languages, and very few minutes to make a small case. It's pressure. Well, I don't have the luxury of tying myself up in a knot and meditating. I have to quickly calm myself down. Now, most of us are saying to each other, Sven, take a deep breath. And right there, you see the problem about time. The anxiety style is to breathe through the mouth and inhale too much. And that just cranks up more and more anxiety, and it blows off carbon dioxide. It's different. Tactical calm, check your posture. Exhale through the nose. You can all try this now. 6 seconds. Gently breathe in low through the nose again. 4 seconds. And then out. 6 seconds through the nose. And in. 4 seconds. Simply doing 3 cycles of slow exhalation through the nose and gentle inhalation. 6 out, 3 in, 4 in. That's a 10-second breath cycle. When you do that, your vagus nerve activates, you become calmer, your mind becomes clearer, and your empathy portal, your social engagement system, opens up. If I listen to you and take a deep breath, I become more anxious, my mind scrambles, and my empathy portal closes. All right, tactical calm is simple. We can do this every few minutes, before a call, when you take a break, when you move from one task to another, before you go to sleep. If some of you are struggling to fall asleep, just simply go to your belly, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, and each time your mind thinks, back to your breathing. All right, tactical calm. It is simple. It is foundational to any meditation. Good posture, always through the nose, slow breathing, and breathe low. All righty, and number 4 is presence. So the really bad news is our generation learned that the mind was a great thing. It's actually a wicked thing. You have 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and those thoughts are wrecking your life. All right, if you think about your thoughts, you'll see that most of them are repetition. So to become present, right, we absolutely have to learn to identify thinking, stop it, and bring yourself to the present. And to help you with that, when your thinking goes into the future, you start the worry loops, often what keeps you awake at night. Worry loops generate anxiety, which further accelerate the speed of the worry loop, which is more thoughts. Anxiety disorder is the most common mental illness of our time. If we could identify it, exhale, and come back to the moment, you've cured anxiety. Now, that muscle is pretty weak for most of us, so you've got to practice it hard. The other trap for your mind is it can go into the past. And when it's in the past, it ruminates. And when you ruminate on your mistakes, you get sad. I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did that. And round that goes, and down goes your mood. And the more those thoughts go round and round. So when you talk to someone with depression, that's what you hear. Everything bad always happens to me. And here I go again. Okay? And the second thing about rumination is if you focus on others, it can dredge up anger. So when I don't hold myself accountable, but I say it's your fault, now I get angry and I start to think about all those things you've done wrong and how I should get revenge, and up goes the anger spiral. All right, stop your thinking. To do that, you've got to learn to identify it, name it, bring it back to the present, and use your breathing to learn to be more in the present. And the fifth one, before some questions, is this emotion or empathy. It's the biggest one, right? The bank I'm talking to today, I'm having a huge struggle because these leaders, they want a button. They want a tool to fix their employee well-being. And what I'm trying to say to them is you are part of the solution. You actually have to manage your own emotions. You've got to understand the emotions of your people and show yourself how to walk the talk. So emotional intelligence, is in many ways It's a complicated idea, but it can be made very, very simple. It's the ability to be more self-aware. And I think of it as check body, check emotion, check mind. Quick scan. Where's my body? Posture, tension, face, facial expression. What am I feeling emotionally? Can I name it? And what am I thinking? That ability to quickly name your physical, emotional, mental state is the key to learning to be emotionally intelligent. And then empathy is the capacity to ask yourself, as you talk to someone, and I'm looking at a tool now, and asking, what does his body tell me? How's his posture? What does I say about his sleep and getting up so early this morning? You know, I wonder what he's smiling. Okay, so there's some happiness there, maybe some humility. All right, I'm getting a sense of his emotions through the facial expressions and maybe the tone of voice. And then you've got to ask yourself the questions, leader, what are they thinking? All right, those three parts of empathy are in different circuits of the brain, and each one of them is trainable within 6 weeks. So if you take time when you sit down with someone who matters, someone you're leading, and you ask yourself, what's the body telling me? What are the emotions telling me? What is the mind telling me? You are opening your empathy portal. People will experience that as compassionate or altruistic leadership. It's essential. And in our busy time, where a lot of our calls on Zoom, we're going from one Zoom call to the next. Some leaders tell me they're having 13 Zoom calls a day. Well, can you imagine the quality of empathy on your 13th Zoom call? It's a zero. That empathy portal is closed. So, got it? So move briskly, manage your sleep, breathe slowly, be present, and work on your EQ and empathy. Sorry, it's a long answer, Rubina, but I really believe that if each one of us as leaders could walk this talk, our people would notice and they would follow. The most effective way for you to lead is to be a good example yourself. Don't be shy of letting your people know that you take this seriously. Rubina, over to you. You need to unmute.
Yeah. So that was very, very powerful, Sven. And what really makes it interesting is that it's very pragmatic. Something that if we really set our intentions, it's something we can easily embed in our day-to-day life, but definitely needs a lot of discipline. And I love the 5 things you said, but what really caught my attention is the empathy piece. You know, as leaders, we are so driven by numbers, performance, that very often we forget that empathy piece. And as leaders, we have a duty of care. Today, when we are, working virtually, it gets even more difficult to have that kind of a personal connect to really understand how our people are. So can you share with us what are some of the things we can do to really know how our people are traveling? And how can we as leaders really give attention where it is needed?
Sounds like an easy question, Rubina, but it's actually quite difficult. But it's actually something we're working quite hard with a couple of leadership teams at the moment. I'll take it through a couple of steps. Number one, you have to walk the talk. Let your people know you're doing it. Number two, you need to meet with your leadership team, preferably daily in these times, even if it's a Zoom call. And in that leadership team meeting, you want to open each of the meeting by checking around the group and asking how each member of your team is traveling. The leader, the CEO, has got to show that type of empathy. Now, there are many ways to do it. How are you traveling? How are you feeling today? Did you have a good weekend? But to show your leadership team that you as the leader of that team care about them. And it can be really fast. And you can train your people to say, you know what, I'm a 10 out of 10 today. I'm a -5 out of, I'm not so good. I need some help. People will learn to be quick, but you must do that, and that must be a ritual. Third piece, the leadership team have to hold each other accountable for doing the same thing with their people. So each member of that leadership team, each time they have a meeting and a rhythm with their leadership team, they've got to have that same discipline of checking in with people. I think it's so important. You know, you've got to watch the span of control. If you have too many direct reports, it becomes impossible. So you need to have a number of people you can manage. I think as you get past 10, it gets really, really hard. A couple of little tips, maybe the main one that I've seen really have an impact, possibly not with a Zoom call, but just pick up your phone once a day and check in with each of your team members. Rubina, how are you doing? And ideally do that at pretty much the same time every day. So that round about that time, you're starting to think, Sven's going to give me a call. And then you got to follow through. And this is not a thing to discuss performance or to complain about something or to address a drama. This is just, Rubina, how are you traveling today? What's up? Anything I can do? That's the kind of empathy I think that's going to make a real difference. Yes, we can do it with fancy gadgets and they may support, but I think if that top-down empathy doesn't feed into the organization, I don't see it lasting.
Right, right. I hear you. And one thought that comes to my mind, Sven, like you said, that the world has been depleting through the pandemic. And these connections that we are talking of are either becoming a ritual, good to do things, or they are just getting, less and less as we hide behind the virtual screens. You have been working extensively with leaders through the pandemic. What have been your, observations with the struggles that leaders are having in actually executing this piece?
Sorry, the last part in executing?
Executing this piece of staying connected with their people. Yeah. What have been some of the things that you have been seeing? And what are some of the suggestions you would have?
You know, as I said right at the beginning, I think one of the biggest things we're hearing from leaders is this fatigue. So if I just, I'll dig this up, sorry, give me a second. So I mentioned in that spiral, and you talk about the pandemic, you got the overload, how many numbers today, what's happened, are we in lockdown? You get this disengage, and then you get anxiety, and then you get anger, and then you get this kind of resignation, fatigue, freeze response. That's where many of the leaders are at the moment. Now to lead, because that's also really where depression goes. If you don't solve that, depression is waiting for you. And, a great leader said to me once, years ago, when I was doing my MBA, leadership is the opposite of depression. So the biggest challenge, as I see it today, is that leaders are going to have to name this, tame it, and reframe it. And it's hard, right? It's really hard. And it's for someone who's always been in control, someone who may be a bit more rational and cognitive, to actually feel vulnerable like that is a very difficult thing to do. So, we try to simplify it. I mean, the ultimate goal when you're in that fatigue state is you've got to connect. So if you're struggling with doing it in your team, which many teams are doing very well at the moment, by the way, and many of them are meeting every day for exactly this reason. But if you don't have that, I would start with a coach or a mentor. That connection is critical for leaders today, because the task ahead of us, to re-emerge from COVID and to build people back to full flow in a new way, it's a big task. It's going to take a long time. So I think leaders need to be both humble and courageous and be willing to put their hands up for a little bit of private, confidential help. I think that's really, really important. I worry a little bit. I think some leaders who've survived well because they've been good digitally or good financially, you know, the typical systemizing brain of a leader, they really are struggling at the moment. And for them, learning these empathy skills is very difficult. They keep missing the point. I think we're going to see lots of those leaders fade away. I really do. I think, you know, for organizations to survive, you're going to have to find empathic CEOs, empathic senior leadership teams. So we're going to have to do a lot of work on that EQ stuff for sure. You know, a second thing is going back to one of the 5 things I said. One of the most important things in this time is to be present. Be present in this moment. This is all we have. Don't worry about where we're going. Don't fret about what we've gone through. Just be present. All right, that allows you to fill that bucket. Yeah. But look, it's a tough job. We're worried about many of our clients at the moment. Dangerous time for leaders, and a huge opportunity for those leaders who can, who care, who are part of this kind of community to step forward. And, you know, it will be a new world of leadership, I think.
Wow. Yeah, that's very, very, you know, impactful and so encouraging to know that how it beautifully synergizes with the LEH model, which is so based on humanity and being human leaders. And definitely that is the way forward. So thank you so much, Sven, for all these, you know, sagacious ideas full of wisdom. I have really got a lot of takeaways from this session, especially the 5 you know, pragmatic things that you said, which are challenging, yet I am putting my intention to bringing that to practice. And I'm sure a lot of our audiences would also benefit by really reflecting on those. I'm very mindful of the time and that our audiences also have a fair bit of questions for you. So once again, thank you, Sven, for being here with us and for sharing your insights. And I would like to hand over to Atul to take the audience's questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rubina. A great conversation, Sven. I mean, personally, very fascinating. I'm not going to eat up more airtime, so I'll jump straight to the questions. So great conversations and some common themes coming up here. So I think I'll start with the first one. People understand it intellectually, and especially in a very powerful and simple way. You explained the need of some disciplines or changes or shifts people need to drive. Yet you understand from an intellectual perspective, but you don't apply that on an everyday basis. Are there any practices or any simple tools, techniques, would you suggest, Sven, which people should deploy to bring these shifts or changes to life?
Yeah, and look, I'm happy to share a guide so we can do this really quickly. But the way to do this is to set up your day with a non-negotiable rhythm. And each one of you will be different. Each one of you will have different priorities, and maybe we didn't even talk about them today. But I'm sure you'll be able to find 5 things that you could agree to yourself as a leader that are actually not negotiable. When I do these 5 things, I'm a better leader, I'm a better person. I know it I mean, you know, I've been lucky. I've been groomed in this from very early in my life. I still make mistakes, but I certainly know what my top 5 are. Put them into your day and put them into your diary and protect that time like it's gold. Every time you let someone's meeting run over one of those non-negotiables, you failed yourself, you failed your team, you failed the organization. All right. I think it is mission critical that you work out what those non-negotiables are and you diarize them. And, you know, maybe you can't get 30 minutes exercise. We'll get 10, but never get less than 10. All right. So I have like a minimum non-negotiable plan and then an optimal non-negotiable plan. And sometimes I have to back it down a little bit. And obviously doing a late night session like that, it's going to knock my sleep. Well, that's going to have a concertina effect for 10 days, probably, until my sleep cycle is back into a normal rhythm. So I need to plan for that, have a power nap this evening, and I need to restore that rhythm over the next few weeks. And I need to be humble. I may have some errors. I just think, in today's world, if you're not willing to establish your non-negotiables and execute them, you really shouldn't be in a leadership position. Leadership is personal, and it's so much more personal now. And, there are lots of choices. You may not like the 5 I suggested. It's just what we find really helps people hold altitude. You've got to execute.
That's great. So a couple of other themes coming up, Sven. One is, as leaders, can you assess your current state of resilience? Are there tools which enable you to understand where you are today? And a linked or connected question is resilience a state of mind, or it's a competence which you can build? And if it is a competence, how do you build that?
Right. Well, I think, if you think about where resilience, the biological, psychological stuff we do is today, it's sort of where logistics was in the Second World War. So it's very primitive. We've got a lot to learn. There are lots of tools. If you want to get an example, you can go to our website and have a look at the resilience diagnostic, and it gives you a view. We call it a state assessment. So to get into the second part of your question, remember I said check body, check emotion, check mind. I think it's all 3. And I think to be a well-balanced, mature leader today, you need to understand the state of your body, sleep, fitness, nutrition, energy, cycles, all that kind of stuff. You need to understand your emotional state, and you need to understand your mental state. Each one of us will be more powerful in one area. I'm a more physical person. Some people are more emotional, others are more mental. Play to your strengths.
Yeah.
But it's an assessment of the state of all of them. And remember, they're totally interconnected. So for example, if I simply tuck in my chin, which you can all do right now, and lengthen the back of my neck, and lower my shoulders and relax my face and exhale fully, I've changed my body. But actually, I've changed my emotions as well. And I've changed my state of mind. Likewise, if you're having a real flat day, Rabina, maybe this would have been a better thing. Just simply put your pen or a chopstick in your lips like this. And just do something with the chopstick in your lips like that. Now, you think I'm ridiculous, right? But what's happening there is you shorten the zygomaticus muscle. When you shorten that zygomaticus muscle, the brain is looking at you and saying, he's happy. Why on earth is he happy? I thought he was miserable. You can hack into your emotions and your thoughts by changing your body or changing your emotional state, remembering a beautiful moment, or changing your thinking. So it's very flexible. It's very buildable.
Perfect.
And to be honest, my goal would be if each one of us as leaders could quickly do a little scan, check body, check emotion, check mind. That's your best assessment of your resilience. Tools can help you. They can flesh it out and give you different perspectives, but actually it's a self-assessment we need.
Perfect. So I'll probably take one more question or one more theme, and I know quite a few of those are there. And Sven, typically we go back, so I'll come back to you with those questions, and then we can provide your responses to our audience today. So this is about building a resilience muscle. How do we build this muscle or empathy muscle in our leaders? This is a question, by the way. Our LEH journeys are targeted towards that, but there's also a connected question on the sincerity in those empathy efforts, because there's also a lot of frustration, especially in the current times when people show up as empathetic who've never been like that in the past. There's a little bit of a doubt or a question mark on the sincerity which sits behind that. So any advice on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think to be reassuring, it's very hard to fake emotion. People will find you out. So the first thing is don't cheat. Don't pretend to be happy when you're angry. Let me give you a practical example. Atul, I'm not angry. How do you deal with that, right? I mean, you know, I'm raging in anger and my words are, I'm not angry. It's not going to cover. And this happens every day in board meetings and team meetings. So don't fake it. Second thing, it takes time, this empathy muscle. There's no doubt about that. And all I would ask in the early days is simply greet someone, ask them how they are, and close your lips.
Right.
Be present and listen.
Perfect.
That will surprise people more than enough. You really don't need to go too far. Third thing I'd like to say to this one, Atul, and I think it's a very important one in today's time. Remember, as leaders, your job is to keep people in that top half of the spiral. It's very easy for people to suck you down.
Yeah.
There is a difference between empathy and sympathy. Leaders have got to walk that line very, very carefully. So in empathy, I can see, Atul, I can understand you're having a tough time of this. That's enough. You've got to stay strong, listen, understand, repeat it. But many leaders feel so bad for Atul. They say, oh, Atul, you give me the problem, or I will sort that out for you, or don't worry, we'll bring in this and we'll bring in that. Well, the next thing you know, you're gonna empty yourself as a leader, and you haven't helped your person. So empathy does require a little bit of tough love.
Yeah.
Careful listening, clear acknowledgement, but also boundaries. Well, look, this is something you need to solve. Here's how I can help you. All right, but here's where you may need to go elsewhere. And I think, you know, a little takeout for that. In today's world, I think every single organization should have some EAP solution. Somewhere where your people can go to talk to someone. And it's not always the leaders, right? Yeah, so that's the best I can do. It's a long journey, there's no doubt. And remember, some of us are systemizers. So we're very in our heads. For those people, empathy is hard. Others of us are empathizers. It comes very naturally. And some of the more strategic system stuff isn't that easy. It's just part of the diversity of humanity.
Perfect. So there are some great questions out there. I'm going to consolidate, Sven, follow up with you, make sure that our audience gets these responses. It's been I know we are on time. It's been an amazing conversation. Really want to thank you for making it so easy and simple to digest. I mean, these are concepts which I think we've been following through, but not in a way as you brought these to life. So my heartfelt thanks to you for joining us in this conversation. Thanks for supporting us. I know that this is like 10 o'clock in the night for you to stay up and help us through with this great insights. I hope for the audience, a lot of your ideas, a lot of your suggestions, builds very simple, easy kind of placards, which would help them to make some positive shifts in their lives as leaders. Thanks to everyone who joined the conversation today. I so appreciate your continued support and sponsorship. More these dialogues and conversations to come. Follow us, by the way, on the LinkedIn Leadership at Humanity, which will basically keep you updated on what are the shifts or changes which are happening, or follow us on our website. So look forward to see you in the next conversation with Cecilia Walker-Jones on the 9th of December. Thanks and have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, morning. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
Thanks all. Privilege.
Thanks to all.
Thanks. You. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye. 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 Thank you.